Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Love Needs No Words. Today we have our good friend Emily Shaw, whose daughter Autumn has the rare genetic condition HNRNPH2 Neuro Developmental Disorder. Emily, thank you for coming on to talk to us about Autumn and to raise awareness of the condition.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I feel like this is going to be like really therapeutic, and I probably should have brought some tissues with me.
Aww. Bless you. Well, I guess a good place to start is if you could explain what effect Autumn's condition has on her and how it was diagnosed.
Sure. So HNRNPH2 or H2, which we call it shorthand, it's an ultra-rare neurodevelopmental condition. So there's only around 150 known cases worldwide. And it was actually a random mutation that occurred at conception, but we didn't find out until a lot later. So just a little bit of background about it. But the HNRNPH2 gene, it's located on the X chromosome. And since females have two X chromosomes, it means Autumn has two copies of the H2 gene, with only one of them that's actually affected. So what that means is people with the condition have actually really varying degrees of severity, depending on how much the unaffected gene is able to compensate for the affected one. It also means that boys who only have one X chromosome are sadly more severely affected. But Autumn, she has most of the common features of the condition, and they affect all areas of her development. But yeah, the list is pretty long, so I'll go through the main sort of things. So she has, I guess one of the main features is that she has a learning disability. Started out as they call it global developmental delay, but once they reach a certain age, it's up to us to name it as learning disability. But because she's still so young, we don't know how severe it's going to be. But what we kind of do know at the moment, so she's all 5, but she functions closer to around sort of 18 months, maybe 2 years old, in terms of kind of cognitive abilities. She also has reduced muscle tone, and that was actually the first sign for us that anything was wrong for her. And she didn't actually start walking independently until she was 2 years, 9 months. So the muscle tone issue means that she has lots of physical difficulties. So she struggles to get up and down stairs. She can't run very fast. She does like a little trot, which is really cute. But she's not running about as fast as other kids are. And she's just started to jump, but it's just like a tiny little bit off the ground. And, she can't sort of climb and clamber on sort of playground equipment. Or like if there's like really uneven ground, she kind of looks for your hand to hold it. Even just kind of getting up and down off the floor, it's difficult for her. She does do it, but it takes her longer to do. Or like to get in and out of the bath, she can't just kind of just jump in, or in and out of the car. So all these kind of daily things, it's just harder for her to do. But it's and they've all taken much longer to get to as well. So, but yeah, it's difficult for her to do anything really in terms of kind of activities in the day that we kind of don't, we sort of tend to take for granted. So whether that's just kind of pulling up a chair and sitting in a chair, Autumn, that's not easy, and she usually needs assistance just to kind of jump up onto a chair, brushing her teeth or combing her hair or putting clothes on, taking them off. She still wears nappies. She's got very little awareness of when she needs to go to the toilet. She's got gastro issues as well. So it could be the muscle tone that makes it difficult for her to go to the toilet, but it could also be messages being sent to the brain. We don't really know, but we do know that there's difficulties with interoception and proprioception. Or they don't ask me what the difference is, I can never remember. But yeah, and then obviously it's a really common feature in the condition. In fact, all of the children, and there are adults as well, have speech difficulties. So Autumn's significantly delayed with speaking. Also, her understanding is incredibly limited as well. She does have a wide array of words that she can say, but she kind of finds it very difficult, or I guess foreign really, to string words together. She says things in one word. We know she can string words together because she can do little bits in songs, one word after another, but it doesn't come naturally to her. And I think her understanding is around one word as well. So if you ask her a question that involves, a bit more complexity than like one instruction, then she doesn't understand what you're saying or what you're asking. And I think as well for Autumn, like the world is just a very scary place, I think. I think that just means that she's often pretty dysregulated. And I'd say she's more dysregulated than she's not dysregulated at the moment. And her confidence is really poor. So she's scared of doing things. She's scared of things that aren't familiar, or it's you're sort of asking a bit more from her. She's afraid, and so she tends to try and understandably avoid things if she can. Obviously, experiencing the world in that way leads to behavioural issues too. So she doesn't seem to have a volume button that we can turn down. So she's very loud, very vocal. She screams a lot. And also the other thing that we're really struggling with is the pinching. So she pinches a lot. It's very much a kind of sensory thing as well as a behavioural thing. And she's not diagnosed with ADHD and autism, but it's very likely that she will be diagnosed with them. So obviously there's features of those things, isn't there, that she also experiences. But also with the condition, there's other things that maybe she doesn't have now, but she might develop. One of the big ones within the conditions is seizures, and that could be really not good. So we have to kind of watch out for those. In terms of when how we kind of got to the diagnosis and that journey, when Autumn was 1, we took her to I think we had the usual health visitor appointment, and then there I mentioned that her feet seemed floppy. At that point, they weren't worried about that at all. I remember trying to put shoes on her feet and I couldn't get them on. It was really strange. They did make some referrals, but those professionals were saying, no, it's okay, let's just monitor. 18 months old, she wasn't showing any signs of walking, any signs of kind of cruising on furniture. She started walking on her knees, and she did that for a good year. She still often does actually walk on her knees. But yeah, so at that point, I think around 18 months, they do start to get worried then. The health professionals are, why isn't this child walking? So they start to do more intensive tests. So she had a blood test, she had a nerve conduction test, she had an MRI of her brain and her spine, which was not fun at all to get that done. And we had some kind of basic genetic screens, but that didn't reveal anything. So we were just getting like everything's fine from all these tests. And so all that was left, basically we got told like that it's got to be a genetic thing. We just don't know what it is. And you may never find out what it is either.
How did that make you feel, hearing that?
To be honest with you, I was holding on to hope so strongly that if there isn't anything, then there's always the possibility that, that she can catch up. Yeah, I remember the call as well, really, really well. And it was so poorly delivered. That she just it was the paediatrician, and it shouldn't have been the paediatrician that told me. It should have been the geneticist, because they know more about this stuff and they're able to sort of share this kind of information like better. But she just sort of told me and said, I don't know anything about it, but I've spoken to the neurologist who had done the MRI scans, etc. And she said, there's nothing to worry about.
Wow.
So, here's this like name of this random genetic condition. We don't know anything about it because obviously they wouldn't know anything about it. It's ultra rare. But it's nothing for you to worry about. And the geneticists will call you as soon as they can.
So yeah, when you look back as well, you must just feel so let down that conversation even happened. I don't know, because obviously you mentioned that it's really rare. Is there information on the internet about it? Because I don't know about you, but I know what I would do with that information. I would go straight onto Google and Google it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. And yeah, because this phone call for a few days later, so I'm not going to just sit and do nothing, right. And the pediatrician's call was like literally a minute long, and I was just so in shock, and because I really didn't think they'd find anything. Not that I didn't know that there was something that was that was going on for Autumn, but I just thought there's no like obvious features. The geneticists had no idea, I just thought that, and they're not going to find anything. But so I was in such shock, and I just, I remember I had to go and tell Ben, and obviously that even thinking about that, I just remember looking at him going, can you get off that call now? And he was like, yeah. And so he like got off the call, and then I had to tell him, and it was awful. And he was doing all the research, and I think I was just in too much shock. And then I think he didn't go to bed because he was just spent the whole night reading. Because there are journal articles, there are papers about it. Because it's for researchers, it's really interesting, these ultra rare conditions. So thankfully there are people doing some research on it. But everything we read was miserable to read. It was awful. And Autumn was still so young. She was 3 when we found out. It was only last January. And we'd been I think there's really 2 camps for when you get a diagnosis. Like, you're either in the camp of, you kind of knew it was coming and it's a kind of relief to hear, or you're in the camp that I was in, which is just like, it's complete, like your world is ripped apart, and, you just have to find a way to process that. And it was just a lot to process. It really was. It's such a poignant moment in your life. Like, it's a traumatic moment in some ways. It can be very traumatic, or it can be very relieving, but it's a really significant moment in your life. And so you kind of, your brain sort of stamps it as like, that's a core memory. And so you really need those people to do it well, because it matters. It really matters. And when it's well, it just makes you feel that little bit more like unsupported, I think.
So what did you do from there? Did you and Ben start researching it over the next couple of days before you spoke to someone else? What sort of did the next couple of weeks look like?
We did the research. We were very concerned because of what we were reading. And then we spoke to the geneticist over the phone I spoke to her for about an hour and a half. It was she was very, very good. And she'd obviously done her research. So that's why she was a bit delayed, because she needed time to do her research. And because she needed to be able to say all the things that she knew about it and to inform us, even though everything she was saying we'd already read ourselves. And she just went through it, and all those different features I kind of mentioned, and said, look, this proportion of children have seizures, this proportion have eye issues, and then she went through all the different things, and I got to ask as many questions as I could. And then we had to sort of tell other people as well. We had to share the news with our family, share it with our friends, and to share it with work. Like for me, I'm not going to be at my best functioning here at work, because I'm just like, I've just had this huge piece of news. And we then discovered a charity called the Yellow Brick Road Project, and they are the H2 charity, and they have a Facebook group which we joined just immediately, and could connect with all those other families that have got children, adult children as well, and hear their stories. And again, that's a lot as well. That's a lot. So yeah, we kind of connected with that group, which has been, godsend. It's been amazing to connect with them. And, we're learning about what they're doing. I mean, a big part of it is raising awareness, because there's going to be so many other children out there that are undiagnosed. Yes, the diagnosis did shatter a lot of my hopes, but it also helped me to process, to accept. I haven't been able to accept everything yet, but and there's lots more to accept over time. But we are accepting a lot more than we were prior to the diagnosis. I wasn't, before the diagnosis, I was really anti-special needs schools, and I was like, no, I can't think of that. That's like a whole other world that I can't enter right now. I couldn't even say special needs. It was additional needs before I could say special needs. Couldn't say disability. These were all like really powerful words that had so much meaning attached to them, and I just didn't feel I was able to kind of go there. But then when the diagnosis forced me to go there, and now I've learned so much more and about special needs, and I'm able to say those things with pride now. Funnily enough, it's like, yeah, no, my daughter, she does have a disability, and I had some really ableist views prior to all of this, and I've really changed a lot of my perspective on things. So, yeah,
I think probably a lot of people can relate to that, because until you're walking in those shoes, I think it's very difficult to be able to put yourself in that position or to really understand. I think most people would probably empathise with that. How have you and Autumn's dad processed that? It's obviously quite a personal journey, and you're trying to navigate that together as well. How's that been?
It's weird, because it's probably done both, brought us closer together and also pulled us further apart in different moments, because we always say to each other, like, you're the only person that really knows what I'm going through, because nobody else gets it to the same level as your other half, and so and that has brought us massively closer together, I think, because it's like such a bond that we have that we didn't ask for, but it's happened. And yeah, I think I think we can both be as vulnerable with each other because of that, because we know, because whatever he's experiencing, I'm pretty much experiencing as well. And so it's easy then to just share. I've been thinking this or feeling this, or, I'm worried about this, because, they're probably thinking it and feeling it too. But at the same time, because it's so hard to be a SEN parent, because you've got all those extra layers, which are so massively stressful, it makes relationships harder, doesn't it? It's hard. Relationships are hard anyway as a parent, a new parent. It's a real test of a relationship. But I think as SEN parent, we have so many other things to think about, to worry about, to manage, to care coordinate. We are much more stressed out. We're much more burnt out. And that does affect relationships for sure. You've got less time to spend time together. We use our car journeys, that's our time. Or we just don't sleep enough so that we can stay up to chat. That's how we get around it sometimes. But yeah, it certainly puts an additional strain on the relationship.
On the topic of school,
Yeah,
it's obviously early days for all three of ours. How's that going? Because that's a huge transition from nursery, where she was happy in nursery. Well,
yeah. Good. So I've been told. It's really, communication is very different from a school than nursery was. They just sort of say she's had a good day, and they have been using this communication book, which is like it's like those like exercise books you used to use at school. Just filling that in. I'm thinking that isn't going to last very long. By the time I've like spilt tea on it and I've gone out in the rain with it, that's just not going to last, is it? But anyways, okay. But no, apparently she's supposed to be doing okay. I think she does scream the place down walking from home to her school, and that does capture quite a lot of people's attention. So I'm trying to navigate that at the moment. And as soon as I realise that this could be a thing, because I think Autumn's going to be making this kind of single morning, and people are going to be looking or saying things, I just thought I'm just going to message the group of parents just to explain, look, I know Autumn's coming in screaming, I know it seems very alarming, however I think she's just anxious, just like all the other kids are, but Autumn doesn't know how to express that in the same way that your kids have learned how to express it. And so, although it might sound like she's really, really, really distressed, and it does sound like it's really alarming to hear, actually, she's probably just a bit distressed because she's like going into school. She's probably going to be fine, but she doesn't have any. She's only got kind of 0 to 100. She doesn't have the in between. And I sort of thought about it like it is a bit like a baby. A baby can smile and giggle, or they cry, and it's like a really loud cry. There's no ground, and Autumn's kind of like that. So just because she's, screaming place down, it doesn't mean that, something awful's happening. She's just anxious, just like all the other kids. So I think, that was I've said that because of my own self-preservation of like, I don't want every single morning people to be commenting. But when somebody, completely innocently says, oh, bless her, she must be really struggling today, I'm like, you know what? She's actually not. This is just Autumn. Like she's like this when I only gave her half a rice cracker instead of a whole rice cracker. It was the same noise.
Yes.
She's not actually. I know she's not actually that upset because I know that she loved her, and I know her. Yeah, exactly. I know, she probably wouldn't like move. She would, if she didn't want to go, she'd sit on the floor. But yeah, so I think it's just that sort of thing where you're just like, I just want to kind of go about my everyday and not necessarily be reminded. And I know it's not his fault, but I think sometimes you just feel like you're just being reminded of it all of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely understandable. I mean, you've touched on it slightly there, but what would you say are some of the most challenging things about Autumn's condition?
I would say it's the day-to-day stuff actually now. I think before it was like, at the start it was like she's not walking and then it's not talking. Now it's kind of the everyday kind of challenges that we have, like particularly around the behaviour, but also play as well. So Autumn doesn't really play in any kind of traditional sense. Her form of play is like people play, so singing songs, or like if you give a tickle, or like you do action songs with her, that sort of thing. But that's really kind of how far it goes. And unless you go through that and see your child not able to engage with the world, how they're supposed to engage with the world, and kind of miss out on all these opportunities, all these toys that have been bought for her, all these things that she could be doing that she's not doing. Even if it was just doing it in a slightly different way, she's just not engaging. There's no internal drive or motivation to engage with play. That is incredibly hard. That's really challenging. And I'd say probably like gut wrenching sometimes, when you're just with her and you just can't get anything from her. You can't do anything. You can't. I think I haven't accepted that yet. I've not got to that place yet. The screaming and the shouting, that's really hard to manage, because sometimes it's all day, and that your nervous system can't handle. And so trying to just get through a day when there's this child screaming at you all day long, and you don't understand what they're saying. You don't understand what it is that they want or that they need. And you're trying to figure it out, and they're still screaming at you. If anybody's remembers the times with a baby that's screaming and it's like an hour or two, how hellish that is. If you've got that all day long, sometimes it's like that. That's incredibly difficult. We've had to come to terms with, we just have to spend less time with her, which is such a painful thing to have to say. But, you can't, hopefully it will change, but, no one can handle that amount. And so, relying on grandparents to, have her whenever they can. And obviously, whether it's kind of babysitters or that sort of thing, and also massively tag teaming, like you have her for this portion of the day, or you take her for a walk and, have breathing space. And that breathing space might still be it's not necessarily restful, or it's just not being around Autumn sometimes. And that's horrible, isn't it, to think of that's where we had to get to. But it's also just that reality. We can't, nobody can cope otherwise. You just wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, we all need our space, don't we, from our children, whatever the situation. But yeah, we know you as a friend, and you're doing such an amazing job. I mean, even listening to your story, finding out that your daughter's got this rare condition, and then having to look into it, and now navigating this world that you didn't expect. You're doing an amazing job. For those listening, they'll be thinking, do you use any picture cards or sign language or anything to kind of communicate with her in any other way?
Yeah. You know what? It's our next step, I think. So Autumn has a very good speech and language therapist that Amy, you've made use of too. She's really
she's amazing, yeah.
And she sort of veered away from that for Autumn, actually. I think because she's using words, I guess it's I think it's trying to keep things simple. Also because our understanding is so limited, I think I think the pictures could actually, when she was, younger as well, it would have been a bit too much for her.
Mm-hmm.
It requires quite a lot to be able to sort of, it does require understanding to be able to communicate with pictures. And I don't think Autumn was really ready for that. However, I am starting to think now that maybe that would be good. I think as well, the other big reason is it was like, and this is probably advice that was given to me, kind of focus on one problem at a time. And, you know, so many problems all at once. Just over a year ago, I was so overwhelmed with, you know, speech and language, OT stuff, physio, you know, EHCP, you know, all the shebang, and then learning about the condition. It was so overwhelming, and I was trying to become all of these different therapists, and I just thought, I can't actually do it. I can't apply all these strategies that keep being shared with me. So I just thought, I'm not ready to do that sort of picture communication with her, because it would require me to have to figure out how to do it, and time, like, you know, printing all the stuff out. And I did print some stuff out actually, but you know, I didn't really know what I was doing. And, you know, do you get like real photographs? Do you use like the little drawings, and where do you get them from? Like, this is a whole like other world or another language, you know, I'm having to learn here. And I don't know how to do it. And so, yeah, I just don't feel like I was ready as much as Autumn wasn't ready. So I think now we're kind of actually thinking about it, but obviously just started school, so we're not going to kind of overwhelm her just yet. But obviously lots of people use devices as well. Again, I don't think Autumn's ready for that yet either. So I think start slow and steady. So, you know, maybe the now and next board. I think school might even be using that actually, but we're not using it at home yet. So maybe just starting there, and seeing where that takes us really, because yeah, I think it's just like it's a whole minefield, isn't it?
I guess one of the positive things about Autumn's story is that there was a point where you didn't think she might be able to walk. So what was that like when she took her first steps?
I don't think we'll ever stop being hugely grateful, because we know just what it took to get there. You know, I think again, like it's only us that really understand what it took for her and what it took for us. It was so much patience and persistence, because Autumn has just had no drive whatsoever, no motivation to walk. And we tried different devices for her to hold on to, reins that we could like take the weight. And then I realised that there were these like walking frames. I think I must have seen pictures of them. And I said to the physio, why don't we try a walking frame? Like, I don't know why the physio couldn't suggested it, but she didn't. And that the walking frame was like a game changer, because she had like this spark in her that was like, oh, I can get around on my own. And like, it was like so amazing watching her walking around with this walking frame. As I said before, like, we were holding on to so much hope that she would be able to do, you know, all the normal things, the typical things that you'd expect. It's that it's not been that long really that we've had to shift that perspective. You know, we didn't expect any of this. But I guess even still, there are still definitely glimmers of things that really surprise us. So the jumping, I had no idea that would be something that she could do. And yeah, it's such a small little thing. She doesn't even get off the ground very far, but it's like, wow. Also, she has a bit of a specialist interest in yoga. Now, somebody who's very physically challenged.
That's amazing.
I know, because they did it at nursery, which is like really sweet. But there's also this YouTube woman, Cosmic Kids Yoga. She's amazing.
She's so engaging. I could watch her.
And so seeing Autumn do poses like blows my mind. So She can do downward dog. She can do like the 3-legged dog thing. She can do bridge pose. And I'm like, how did that happen? Yeah, so that's really, really amazing to see. And there's like, there's this time where, so at her nursery graduation, so it's like this little mini graduation that they had, all the children lined up, and they put on their little gowns and call them little hat things. Yeah, she had to wait. They would have to wait for their certificate, their name to be called in to have their certificate, and then they'd have to go back in line. And I was just like, this is never going to happen. Like, she's not going to wear the hat thing, the cap, whatever it's called. She's not going to keep the gown on. Like, she's not going to line up. And then there she was, lining up with all the other children, looking like a typical child, following instructions. I mean, obviously she's not following verbal instructions, but she's following like what the other children are doing. And she lined up, I don't know, it must have been about 10 minutes. And she stood there as they were saying all the other kids' names. I was like, wow, that's really impressive. And then, when they all threw the cap in the air, she did it at the same time.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah, so she obviously was copying and like trying to figure out the world in her own way, because there's no way she would have understood what was being said to her.
But that's so encouraging, because she's even just imitating and watching and taking it all in. That's incredible.
And she was, the nursery said she could be Mary in the Nativity. And she's like,
oh, that's amazing.
It's so sweet. It was so sweet. But obviously I was so anxious. I just thought, oh no, she's got like this leading role. I mean, it's a little kiddies nursery thing. It lasted about 10-15 minutes. It was very, very basic for all the little ones. But I was so nervous. I didn't want her to see me, because so I had to hide back. And I just thought, it's going to go terribly. She's going to be upset, or she's going to, just do something to bring attention to her, that take attention away from the nativity. But she really surprised us. She did amazingly. She followed all that. They had to walk around the stage in these little circle, following the donkey or something. And she did it holding the other children's hands, and then she had to say her line, which was one word, which was baby. She had to say baby, and she said it, and it was like, oh my gosh, people have no idea
what that meant.
Yeah, to see
how massive that was for you.
It's so massive, so massive. Because it's just so many skills involved in doing that. And, we're so aware of her kind of deficits, weaknesses, that's what you end up focusing on so much.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of preparing yourself, aren't you, for the worst all the time.
And you can't fully ever relax into anything, because your brain automatically goes to what's the worst case scenario? Either, like you said earlier, as a self-preservation thing, just to manage your expectations, I guess, just to be aware so that you can, I don't know, jump in at any moment or whatever. You can never fully relax, I don't think, and just think, this is going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain's just never quite in that space.
No, you're always in an unsafe place, really.
Yeah.
You're always waiting to get kind of triggered again. Yes, you can't. It's really difficult, but amazing when those moments happen. You just hold them dear to you, so dear to you. And I think she will learn other things. She will continue to learn. It's just going to be at her pace, and we just don't know now what that pace is going to be like. But we have to go with that. And don't have a choice.
Can they give you any indication about what the future might hold, or is it very much we really don't know?
Yeah, it's the same with all the conversations. I think it's only when we surround ourselves with the other H2 families. So there's a conference that was held. We've been to both the conferences each year, And so we've met quite a few of the families, and there's kind of like an upper limit, I guess, in terms of ability for like the older children. And so I guess we're kind of setting out expectations around that, that it's not really going to probably go beyond that level because we haven't seen any other people that are beyond it. So that kind of, keeps it within that sort of zone, I guess.
What does that look like, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's so there are some children who can talk. However, the communication isn't typical conversation. It's kind of sort of maybe learnt in a different way, the way that they're talking, and it maybe like kind of stock phrases, or it's just a very limited kind of level of that they're talking at. So maybe, it would be really wrong of me to say exactly because I don't know, but as a guesstimate, you might sort of the conversation level you might have with a 4-year-old. I've probably seen children who are 15, 16 that are talking maybe what you'd expect from a 3 or 4-year-old. So it's kind of at that sort of level of conversation. And in terms of physical ability, it's kind of where Autumn's at. So, there are children who can walk and climb up and down steps, but they all are limited physically. And then I guess in terms of learning, it's sort of similar, really. So everyone that we've met that we know of will need some level of support for the rest of their lives. They're not going to be, Autumn's not going to be able to live independently. Whether she can live with supported, in a supported way, where it's not completely independent, but it's not completely, in some sort of residential setting, we have no idea. It's really hard to plan for the future, isn't it? Because we're not going to be, it's the other worry that us some parents have, isn't it? Is when we're not around. But it's not just that. It's like, it's not just when I'm not around. It's when I'm, less capable because I'm just older and I'm more tired, and what support or Autumn need then.
It's hard, isn't it? Because from listening, I'm like, you've of course got to be realistic about the condition. But listening to Autumn's journey, I feel like she's defied so many odds with the walking, with the way she's behaving at nursery. And I think we've discussed it so many times. It's so easy to say, I'm not going to go there because, they're not going to deal with that very well, or we're not going to try that because I just don't know how it's going to go. And I think what we've all learned on this journey is you've got to give these things a go, because sometimes they really, really surprise you, and some things you think they were never going to do, they prove you wrong. So
and I'm really pro like getting Autumn seen out into the world, because I don't want to hide the world from disability. People need to learn about it and need to learn, and I think there's so many amazing things that they can learn about Autumn, and be inspired by her just for being just Autumn. And so anything we can try, we will. But I think it's weighing that up, isn't it, with what is possible, because you try some of these things and you think, actually, this is too much. For example, Ben took her to the theatre and they chucked her out, because she was too noisy, which is just so, like, she loves the theatre and she loves watching things and plays, and she was just being noisy because she was excited. And she was told to leave. I mean, it wasn't quite as blunt as that, but that's what ended up happening. So it's difficult because you try and do things and then you get pushed back on a lot of things too. The world is just not set up for disability and making accommodations and reasonable kind of adjustments to activities. When we have been to those places that are set up for children and adults with learning disabilities that have got play areas and soft plays, and there's really easy changes that you could just apply to any park or playground, and that would make such a huge difference.
When your child struggles, you find things hard, whatever that might look like, whether that's physical or social or emotional, whatever their challenges are, you as a parent see the world in a different way.
And your empathy towards other parents in certain situations, that changes as well, because you've either been there yourself or you get a level of understanding of why they're behaving the way they are. I'm thankful for that in so many ways, for being able to see the world in a different light now.
So you learn things and appreciate things that you didn't envisage learning and appreciating and being grateful for, and those are real gifts. They're not ones you would have chosen, but they're arriving for us all the time, and like you say, it just gives you a very different perspective. It makes you realize actually what is important.
Final question, Emily, what would be your advice to other parents in a similar situation to you? And also, if you could go back, what advice would you give to yourself?
What I would say is, anybody listening, not just necessarily with a child who's got a genetic condition, but any special need parent really, but all of those feelings that you're experiencing, whatever they are, anger, sadness, grief, confusion, anxiety, fear, dread, there's some like really dark feelings too. They're all entirely valid. And I think, my advice would be like, just to give yourself space for that. But obviously, it's easy to find that space when you're being a SEND parent anyway, because you're so busy with just, doing all the things you've got to do to get through the day. So also just giving yourself time to have that space, because it's not going to be like you're going to be able to just, process all this stuff and feel all these feelings all at once. You don't have capacity to do that. You're just going to have to find little moments. For me, I think this is quite a common one, but getting into the car, you drop them off at nursery, or, it's after a club or something, and, feel that feeling, as that was my time. But it's little moments to feel the feelings and really experience and feel them. I actually read a book called Special, and I read this at the start of my journey, and I was really worried that reading it I would feel worse, because obviously you're confronting so much of this stuff. But actually this book, it does make you feel worse in some ways, because you are doing that, and it's so hope inspiring, hopeful. It's so like, you hear all these different stories with different people. It just helped me to realize there is hope, that I'm not going to feel like this forever, that I will experience kind of different like reflections on all of this, and there is space for feeling really good about being a SEND parent, and really maybe even happy about it. I don't think I can say that just yet, but I think there's potential that perhaps when I'm in my old age, looking back, I'll be like, what, I'm so grateful of this experience, that I had this myself. I mean, it's always kind of prefixed with it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. And you're going to do it. And you're going to learn so much. And you're going to become this like better person because of it. And you will be grateful for these moments that you've been through. And yeah, I think it's just, knowing that that there are other people too. There are other people too that have done this, and they're doing it, and they're doing it amazingly. And you're going to be one of those people. I'd probably give myself a giant hug as well, because I needed it. I really needed it.
Emily set me and Kirsty off. We're both crying because you're just so incredible, and those words were so emotive and lovely.
You know what? I mean every single one of them. Like, genuinely, it's like, I know I'm not floods of tears here because I have thought all of this stuff before, and it's so in my heart. Like, it really is. Like, I just, that's my advice. I don't think you doing this journey not feeling it is helpful. I think you've just got to, because it is, it's wild. I use that word a lot. It's really wild, and it takes you down some crazy paths. But so you just got to hold on to your humanity, your inner strength is your kind of compassion for your child that you created, that you have so much hope for and love for, and you just want them to live the best life and that they possibly can. And it doesn't have to be, it's going to be a different life. It's not going to be, she doesn't have to deal with like shitty managers, and she doesn't have to deal she doesn't have to deal with, like, she might, she's just not going to have to deal with a lot of stuff that I had to deal with. I won't list everything. She's not going to have to worry about that stuff. So, her life is still is so worthwhile. And she's so, that our kids are so important. And I think, fortunately, we live in a very able society, and we have made strides to recognise it, but, needs to improve vastly. But there is still this sense, that because you've got disability, you're not as worthy. But we know that's different. We know that's not the case. We know that, just because she's, unintelligent on a, some rating scale, doesn't mean that her life is any less important than, somebody else's. It's just different. It's different.
Well, we think you're amazing parent.
You've talked all about me, but you guys are incredible too, and I think it's wonderful that you've set this up, and it's so good to talk about this stuff, isn't it? And share and learn from others and hear stuff. And some of it will, and cry, and some of it will resonate, and some of it won't. And I think, another piece of advice: if something doesn't resonate with you, that's not quite what it looks like for my child, then just leave that. Put to side, and focus on the stuff that does.
Emily, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience. Honestly, we feel so blessed to have met you, and you are doing an amazing job, and Autumn's got an amazing life ahead of her. So thank you so much.
It's been a real pleasure, and it's wonderful to think that people are just listening to me. I just, talk about her, and she's wonderful.